Hi Ed again.
Hello, Holly again.
How are you again?
I'm good again.
Oh, wonderful again. Um, yes, so we've just done another podcast before we've done this podcast. How are you feeling? Are you energized? Did you have a coffee break?
No, I didn't. I did have a cigarette, and I called Ollie, but I did not have a coffee, unfortunately. I'm kind of
No.
regretting.
Yeah, I should have got one, but never mind. I'm still drinking the drink that I got from the other podcast because I don't know why it's not taking me this long.
Get a coffee from the fancy coffee machine.
I shall after we finished. I'll get probably
Unfortunately,
two. I'm lagging.
I just have a coffee from a fucking lime scale. So
Splendid, lovely. Um, so we'll get straight to it. I'll let the guest introduce himself. Charlie, are you there?
Hey guys, hi. My name's Charlie. I'm one of the singers and bass player in the band Dirt Royal from Brighton.
Hello, Charlie.
hello, Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a bit about your band. I googled and saw your EPK. But yeah, tell us about your band from Brighton.
So we're a three piece, and obviously there's me. There's Leon who sings as well and plays guitar, and there's Loz who plays the drums. And we play like kind of indie punk sort of stuff.
You had a album release. Was it an album or was it an EP release recently?
It is an album. Yeah, album. 12 tracks. That came out about 3 weeks ago on Time for Action Records. So we've just been trying to plug that and stuff really.
And also it's on vinyl as well, which I found quite interesting and rare because not a lot of people do, especially indie artists do vinyl.
And it costs a lot of money, doesn't it, to press that vinyl? So
yeah, how did that work?
The label Time for Action Records, they're strictly vinyl orientated label. So they just if they're going to release something, they do it on vinyl. In fact, we were going to have it out on CD, just out of our choice more so. But because of COVID and everything that's happening, they didn't want to release the CDs just because apparently CDs don't sell that well, but vinyl sells really well apparently, and apparently it has been selling well. So I think if you're into vinyl, people that are into vinyl are really into vinyl. Do you know what I mean? They're gonna buy it on vinyl.
And is it? I can't remember. Is it different colour than? I swear it is. It's not black, is it? It's like
So we got we had a standard a black one made, and then there was a limited edition yellow vinyl. Yellow vinyl, which is pretty cool. It's quite a beautiful thing.
And do you own your own vinyl? Because that you must.
Yeah.
You must have bought it. Yeah. Even though
we got a certain amount. We got like a couple of copies to do as we please. We mainly use as promo, but we took a few in there. But it's yellow, so I don't play it. Although I've only actually listened to the album itself once, because when you record an album, you spend so long listening back to things that you just you can't be asked anymore. Yeah. So I've only really listened to the album on vinyl once. But yeah, the yellow one's going to stay away from greasy hands.
Yeah. How was your process of making the album, like the recording stages and stuff? Like what studio did you use in Brighton? Or I'm assuming you used the studio at Brighton.
Yeah. So we there was 2 songs on the album that were released before the album as singles. So we recorded them at a studio in Brighton with a producer called Russell Church. So we did those 2 songs there, and then we did the rest of the album at a later date. It was about 6 months later, in another studio in Horsham, which is 40 minutes from Brighton. And when we did that there with another guy called Nick, and then we just sort of had them mastered and mixed together, if you see what I mean. Because it was more like Time and Money, and we really wanted those first two singles on the album because they were actually the first two songs out of that bunch that were written. So we felt like they needed to like be together. Do you know what I mean?
Ed, questions about the vinyl, about the album? Have you got any? Because usually you jump in, but I just saw you were adjusting things. But
sorry, yes, it's my I've got on my chair to help with my posture.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting old, Holly. I can't sit down anymore.
Oh.
So, like, when did you record this album? Was it recently, or was it at the beginning of the year?
It was quite a while ago because we recorded it. Well, when did we record it? I think we were finished recording it summer last year.
Okay.
I want to say. Yeah, and then we were because we were kind of like working on a few other things, and then we started working on the artwork, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So like everything kind of got paused because no one really knew what the hell was going on.
Charlie,
you what? Sorry.
You spoke about like you have the track, and was it that you now can't listen to it because you've listened to it so much?
Yeah.
Right. So when you obviously finished, I guess, writing it and recording it, did you ever go back to listen to it and go? Did you kind of force yourself to think in the mentality of, right, it's finalised now, it can't be touched anymore? Like,
yeah,
there's no better, because like I seem to, as a songwriter myself, I find it very hard to put a finish on something and say that I'm satisfied with something. How did you is that something that you feel that you have with some of the songs in the band? Or?
Well, I think obviously like being a songwriter, I'm very like self-critical anyway, but you have to kind of like draw a line with it eventually, because it's time is money as well, that can be an option, and sometimes there's like it depends. I always find it's good to play the songs. I've never done this intentionally. It's just always worked. Like the songs that we've been playing longest. So say some of the songs we were playing live for like over a year before we actually recorded them. You kind of have a better clue of where you're at. Whereas like when some of the ones that are later, you then play them live and you think, oh, okay, that worked. Oh yeah, why didn't we try that? Or you know what I mean? There's always going to be that.
Yeah, exactly. It's about trying to let, and actually that's a pretty good way of doing things before you get something recorded down. You trial a song, play it live, see if the audience likes it, and if they want to hear more of it, then that's when you go, okay, right, well, let's get this recorded down, how we played it during this set, and that's brilliant. Yeah,
that's kind of in terms of like the actual sort of like singles and the videos. We do kind of go on an audience reaction because we don't really like. I don't like to think too much about that stuff. Like, oh, what's going to be a good single, or what's going to, you know what I mean? I don't really like going into that realm too much because you can kind of lose yourself and it can kind of become boring. Start worrying about it. If it's a good song, it's a good song. But there are always the songs that the audience will react better to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And perhaps, so from my understanding from liking bands, I'm obsessed with listening to demos and sort of versions of songs. Have you ever thought?
Me too. I'm really into that as well with bands I love.
Like being able to hear like the development of a song is so cool. Have you ever thought that perhaps maybe you mentioned releasing on vinyl, right? Have you ever thought that's doing a special edition of a demo of one of your songs, or
yeah, like we have like thought about, we've done a couple of like demos of like with B-sides and stuff like that, even though B-sides aren't really kind of a thing anymore. I'm still really into them. Like the rest of the band take the piss out of me a lot for it, because I just find, like what you said about like demos and live stuff, I'm really into finding songs by bands I love and B-sides and demos, and just like Green Day are one I love all their demos, and like the Libertines, like especially like Pete Doherty, he's got hundreds of random songs. Some of them are not very good, but some of them are great. Do you know what I mean? So I'm really into those little kind of raw snippets, you know. But
I think because me and Ed did a tour together for my album, and we did like a live sort of version, and it was like recorded in like a was it Pirate Studios we did it? Yeah, and we just literally recorded the rehearsal, and we then put that on like a special edition live album. And I prefer, I don't know why, it's just like the funniness of, you know, when you've gone, nah, hang on, let's start again, that's shit. And then you just, and you leave that bit in. I think that's like, especially for when you're listening to stuff back, that's cool.
It's still because it's more real, I guess.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. You saying that brings to mind is like a lot of Beatles. All there early, like, and you can just hear them like mumbling and like insulting each other. Like, and I love that. I think that's so great. And like, you know, you'd be like, what? You know, you're just hearing like, what do you think, Ringo? Like, I think it should be faster. Like, you know, just like hearing stuff like that. You know, I find I mean, more so me than Leon and Loz. I'm really into that sort of stuff as a fan of music. Do you know what I mean?
Instead of I kind of prefer it instead of like a full polished sort of version, like it's like a clean cut sort of thing. I prefer listening to dodgy SoundCloud demos that you can find from people and stuff like that.
Well, sometimes you can hear like when you hear like of a song in that kind of form, it's not necessary that you prefer it like to the main version, but you can hear the potential already early on in a scrappy version. I think that says a lot about a song personally. So it kind of makes you fall in love with a song again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you do you record like tracking and like you do like a traditional studio recording, or do you do parts at home and then take parts into the studio? How does your setup work? Because every artist and band's different.
Yeah, I mean we're quite we're quite organic in the sense that we don't like to do too much new stuff in the studio. That mainly comes from time and money, obviously, but like we're quite a live band, and like we do like to kind of bash it out old school in a studio, and just, you know what I mean, if it sounds great like that, it's going to sound even better when you can do other things. But then obviously with us being a 3-piece as well, we are very cautious of we don't want to be too self-indulgent. We don't want to, I mean, it's things like Blink-182, for example. I love Blink-182, but Tom, as a guitarist, just did too much in the studio that he couldn't do live, and then it just sound crap live.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You're like, that doesn't sound like what it should sound like, and it's like, well, actually, you can't actually achieve what he did because it's physically impossible. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, there was one song we did. It wasn't off this album. It was off the first album. So it's called "That Isn't Me," and the guy who was producing it kind of taught me like the third part harmony kind of thing, and took me there, and I got there and I did it, and it was really cool. It was like proper, like especially as like a big Beatles fan, it was like, oh cool, I just did a George Harrison kind of thing. And then we listened back to it, but it sounded, it was all in tune and it was all, you know, good, but it just didn't suit the song. We were trying to be something we weren't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had to like put my ego aside. There's no point in having something on there just because you can do it, basically. You know what I mean? You got to let the song be in its true form and true justice. You know what I mean?
And how do you usually find a producer? Because most people often, believe it or not, struggle to reach out and find producers. How does your band go about that?
I think it's the hardest thing to find a producer, because you can get anyone to produce something, but I don't know. I think you should only really have a producer if it works. I don't think you should have one for the sake of it. So like Yeah, I mean, because there's a fine line between producing and being an engineer.
Yeah.
So essentially, we do kind of we would self-produce ourselves. But I mean, I don't see the point in putting that on the sleeve because I think it's self-explanatory. But there was been like with Russell so the 2 songs off this album, he definitely produced them. Like he had a big part in the sound and the direction, and showed us like some other bits. To me, that's the producer. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
We want to work with him on the 3rd album, which we've written. One of the only positives of I'm sure you guys wrote a lot as well, like in lockdown.
Yeah, some of it good, some of it not so
good. Yeah, definitely. I was like flicking through some stuff, and I was like, what the bloody hell am I on about there? But you know, it's that cabin fever kind of. But it's always better. It's always better to write either way, whether it turns out to be good or bad. But yeah, produce back to your initial question. Producing, finding a producer is hard, and I think you should only get a producer in if it works, not just for the sake of it, because they're gonna, as a producer, they're gonna want to go in there. They're gonna have a vision, aren't they, of the finished product. Now, it's only worth working with someone like that if you've got the same vision. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mess. Just sound like the White Album, all over the place.
Yeah. Ed, questions from you? Have you got one? You're sitting there like, oh, yeah.
No, I was just very interested. Well, that was pretty much like answered all the questions I can think.
Sorry.
But no, it's fine. I was very intrigued. So, like, when did have you been in any other bands previously, and how did that work? And if you were,
basically this has really kind of been my only band. So I had a band when I was at school, and then that kind of kept going after school, and then I moved because I'm not from Brighton. I'm actually from like a shitty little town outside Bristol. so you know, kind of like the standard songwriters, and it being stuck in a shitty middle class town of dreams of running away. You know what I mean? But so I was like from there. So I moved down to Brighton to kind of get into a music scene. Do you know what I mean? Like a proper music scene. And I just started by going to open mics and playing that way, and then we all met through that. You know what I mean? And so this has kind of we've been together, I think, like 6 or 7 years, I think it is. So, no, 7. It's at least 7 or 8 years, not 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has kind of been my own band, really. It's like, yeah, my baby, really.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you're a guitarist, right?
I'm a bass player, so I sing and play bass, and then Leon sings and plays guitar as well.
Okay, so like as a bass player, have you found it sort of challenging performing live on stage? Are you quite comfortable with doing that now?
I am now, but I struggled massively to start with because I was originally a guitar player, and my band at school, we were a 4-piece, and I was a rhythm guitar player. And then the bass player didn't show up to a gig standard, and then obviously you know, as they do, as bass players can do, because there's not many of them, so they can get away with it. So like and the lad, my mate who was playing guitar was the lead guitarist and a complete superior guitarist to me, so he was like, well, I'm not playing bass, and I was like, all right, well, I'll play bass, and it actually sounded better, and I sounded like not to be in an arrogant way, because like I just didn't try. I was just better at bass because I've tried years on guitar. And I'm an average guitarist, but for some reason bass just works for me. But I did struggle because obviously singing lead as well. But like that struggle actually kind of attracted me to it even more, because I kind of liked in an arrogant way. I liked that if I fucked up, like 50% of the sound went boom, gone. You know what I mean? So I quite liked having that on my shoulders, and it was a bit more like aggressive. You have to be a bit more aggressive, like playing bass with like the type of music we do, rather than just like playing some rhythm guitar. And there's no room for slacking basically. So you're constantly working and you're constantly always grinding your teeth.
I think it's quite original for a bass player to be the lead singer as well.
Sorry, cut out there. We're a dying breed basically. There's not many of us.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not type of music play obviously as a bassist, but for some genres that are really very sort of melodic and complex. So let's say, I don't know, like blues or something. So you're always working, you're always moving your fingers and doing all sorts of different scale shapes. Having to then sing, that I find really difficult. So I'm a bassist as well, but I'm also a guitarist. So trying to, I guess it's thinking and then also sync, because you never, as a bassist, I just find it really difficult to play very melodically and then also sing, because sometimes you don't sing to the beat of the song, if that makes sense.
Totally, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So, for example, reggae is pretty difficult because you're playing on the off and you're not playing all the time, and it's sort of spaced out. And having that whilst trying to sort of sing is just it throws you off. I don't know if you find that, if you have that difficulty as a singer and a bassist.
Definitely, yeah. Because like with because if I'm playing like open mic or like with sometimes if we're doing like like sort of like acoustic sessions or something like that, me and Leon will both play guitar and I'll like do chords and he'll kind of do lead. But in terms of like learning a song, it's not just like smashing out some chords. Like, and there's like we do a cover of White Man and Hammersmith by The Clash, and that's quite like a distinctive reggae bass line and a really important one, and that's one like you can't really fuck up. But it took me a while to get there with the singing and the flow. But it is weird. You do kind of have to disconnect yourself a little bit. That's what I love. I love Paul McCartney because he of all the bass playing he did, and then all the harmonies he was doing as well. Like he's working his ass off, Yeah. No one really talks about that, Obviously, everyone talks about what a great singer and songwriter he is, but those bass lines fucking hard, man. Like All My Lovin' is a really, and when you were saying that was the first thing that comes to my head is All My Lovin' by the Beatles. Is he's just going down, and it's completely different to how he's singing, and it is so hard. Exactly. Yeah. But I think when you get there, it's more. It is very rewarding, Like, and like there's like "Lose Our Way," which was the single from the album. That took us a long time to rehearse, and I think partly probably because of my bass line, because of my singing in it. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to do it well, and I'm trying to sing with conviction.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying to play it, and it is, and I didn't want to compromise with the bass line. I didn't want to just, because I wanted it to be how it was supposed to be. So it took me a while to get there. It is hard sometimes.
Yeah. But I'm thankfully.
What is it that you're rustling, by the way? Because I'm like, what? You've did it for a long time. I'm like, what is this? Your what is it? Please show me. Your keys. Oh, why are you rustling this?
Sorry,
is it by your microphone as well? And I'm like, oh my god, I've got headphones on as well.
It's ASMR.
Sorry, go on.
Thankfully, as I'm not that bad. I think it's only on, let's say, particular types of music that aren't either 4/4 or shuffle. Like odd time signatures. What is it, like 2/4? Sort of like very sort of like 30s jazz. Some things where you have to kind of think. Me off. If it's especially if it's something that I have to sing to. But yeah, man, it's hard life being a bassist. But
it is.
Guys, that takes me to another question of mine. Do you find it hard as a bassist to fill empty space, if that makes sense. So like, I'm very much myself. I'm a melodic player, so I hate empty space in a song. I fill that out with my own bass playing.
Yeah.
Do you feel similarly about that?
Yeah, definitely, and like especially being a free piece, Leon's very limited to what he can do live. Do you know what I mean on the guitar? So there is a lot of space that me and Loz on drums, like, you know, we take that upon ourselves to fill it. You have to be really clever with dynamics. Do you know what I mean? And like you have to take advantage of those gaps to you can't let it be empty. If Leon's restricted what he can do with the guitar, then someone's got to come in there. Do you know what I mean? And like, I think there's a couple of songs. I think Leon. No, not a couple. I think Leon's like has said that I do sometimes play the bass like a lead instrument, and it is for that reason. It is to try and fill it out, you know, and like basically, I do take notes. Again, being like kind of indie punk, it would be very easy to kind of just take the root note kind of way, which obviously is essential. It's a fine line, because then you don't want to be one of those guys that's just like the bass player who's like trying to do too much. Do you know what I mean? But then you don't want to be boring. You know what I mean? I think just because it's punk doesn't mean it has to be boring. You know what I mean?
No, I know a punk bassist. Oh my god! So I used to go to these jams in Brighton in this pub called the Odd Shoe. Wonderful place, brilliant place to meet people. Unfortunately, the place got knocked down. But I remember there's this guy called Tom. He had a fucking massive like stuck up mohawk, I think.
Yeah.
And he was just like bassist, and he'd play like songs like "God Save the Queen" and stuff. Wouldn't tell anyone afterwards. And then he'd either stand there playing it on bass and singing "God Save the Queen" and like some other songs from like on the Never Mind the Bollocks album. And he'd either do that, or when he'd get up to play with other people, he'd just be, you know, just overstimulated. And I don't know, like, there needs to be a fine line between sort of doing that and just playing a note again and again and again. It's, you know.
I agree. It's like the rule of rhythm section, isn't it? Like you have to find your place, because you're in risk of being a triad, or you're in risk of being boring and forgotten about. You know?
I suppose, like with rhythm guitarists, it's about I guess I'd compare it to chord strumming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
It's so like, you know, like chord strumming, sort of like broken chord picking, adding some extra, added notes to the chords, making something a 7 or like a sus or something.
Sure.
To make it sound a bit more nicer than just playing the same old bit, especially a 4 or 3 chord song. It will get boring very quick. So
more textured, if any. Yeah, to texture it.
So, just to round it off and finish it off, have you, Charlie, got a question for me and Ed, or questions? You know.
I do. So I'm going to ask you, and it's a hard question. I'm going to ask you both, who is your favourite band or artist of all time?
Ed can go first, because Ed will... I know what he's going to say. Go on, Ed.
I don't have a favourite.
Yes, you do.
If you have to pick one, come on, you've got to pick one.
It has to be Holly Liddell's Jukebox Nights. No, it isn't. Sorry. Sorry, Holly.
Bastard.
My musical knowledge ranges from anything from the 1930s to I'm really into. I've really gotten into. Over the past year, I've really got into sort of 30s jazz, Fred Astaire, and Nat King Cole. That's another one. I love his music. Sweet Lorraine is a really good tune. And then quite recently, reggae and dub reggae and stuff. when I was younger, I was one of those sort of generic e-boys who would just listen to, I don't know, like the Smiths or something.
Mhm.
But you still like the Smiths. Like, you still have a found love.
Like,
Of the
You gotta
Smiths,
love the
don't you?
Smiths. They're
You
great.
do.
They're fucking awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, you gotta love the Smiths. I want to say the Smiths, though, even though I know all of their songs,
Mhm.
but I don't want to say the Smiths. I'm going to say Michael.
I think the Smiths would be a good shout, though. I think that is a pretty good. That's a pretty class top
Yeah.
band.
Well, if I didn't, I want to pick the Smiths, but I'm going to
Yeah.
pick you today. I'm going to say Michael Holiday. Let's say Michael Holiday. Michael Holiday is was this guy in the 1950s. He sort of started singing songs. Now,
Mhm.
in the 50s, it wasn't very popular. It was more popular for people to cover songs that other people.
Yeah.
Mm.
Produced like songwriters behind the scenes kind of thing.
That was sort of like the deal in the 50s.
Mm.
So I don't know. I love this guy, man. I've been listening to some of the songs that he has been singing, and one of my favourites is In Love. It's a really nice one.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to change my answer now.
Oh, no.
You know, I like
So
Michael.
basically, Ed can't pick, really.
No, I've just gone for my. I'm gonna have to say the Smiths.
Yeah, it is the Smiths.
yeah,
Yeah,
I-
well, I thought
I
I
think
was
deep
surprised
down
when he
it's the
didn't say
Smiths.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think.
right. Let's go for the Smiths. You know, you have Morrissey, Johnny Marr, and Morrissey. Cutting ability is just
Yeah, man.
Started
I
out
agree.
early 1980. I think they got together in like 1982.
Mm.
Yeah.
They started off with Suffer Little Children, which was one of their first. It was the first demo that they'd written together, and describing the Moors incident in Manchester, and of like the lyrical ability and Johnny's sort of guitar playing. And
The
so
man's a wizard. The man is a fucking wizard.
they're like brilliant. And it's just unfortunate that Morrissey has gone down a completely different path.
Yeah, I know.
Mm.
Johnny in a sense, because he's not really doing that type of music anymore. He's doing his own little thing. In fact, saying that, Holly and I, one of our lecturers, Dave Cronin,
Yes.
was he like the manager or something?
Yeah, the manager of
Johnny Marr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Johnny Marr's manager. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
like,
and A&R and stuff.
The events. He organises all of the events for Johnny at Glastonbury and stuff. And actually, he used to work for Rough Trade back in the day.
Yeah.
And
I've seen Johnny Marr solo a few times. I really like it. I think it's the thing I love about it is it doesn't sound like the great one of the greatest guitarists of all time. It sounds like a new band. I mean, the songs are really good. They're just like they're really well written. He's not over the. It's just Johnny Marr, innit? Like he doesn't do anything over the top. Yet it's amazing. Do you know what I mean?
So the way you have to think about it is back in the early 80s when they came around, that original that sound wasn't. The Smiths were the first to come up with the alternative music.
Yeah, indie almost. Like kind of it's kind of because it was like that genre. Like, it's a little bit of punk, but it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that, and that's kind of what ever since every band that's gone under that indie thing have had that kind of thing about them. And yeah, I agree with you. I think the Smiths were the first bands like that.
Well, and it's refreshing because I've heard some of Johnny's stuff. I admit that I'm not as much of a fan of his solo stuff, but I can certainly say that he has a completely different sound to what's around. And to be honest, most modern music is quite boring.
True.
I don't know if you know the guy Declan McKenna. If you know of him, he's a songwriter.
My name rings a bell.
Yeah, he's based in the Greenwich area, and actually I met him a couple of times through some house parties I went to a few years ago. I was friends with the bassist, and this guy, man, he must have been on Ket or something, because he was like all he could do was just boast about himself. Oh, I'm so great. Oh, you know, it's like he went to Goldsmiths Uni, and like, you know, like he sounds as generic as the rest of most of what's around at the moment. And I'm all about, you know, new sounds and equally also lyrics that sort of you're able to interpret in any other way that you'd like. So yeah, that's why I'd say that the Smiths are probably one band of all time.
I'll keep mine short and sweet.
So,
That's alright. I'll keep mine really short. I would probably. So is it one I have to pick? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just one.
Not like Ed that picked how many.
Yeah. 7.
I think I would have to say Plan B.
Oh, nice. Nice.
That it lasts me, but I probably think the reason why I wanted to get into music was because I listened to Plan B, and I listened to his first album. So when he released his first album, I was like, I don't know, an angsty teen, I think. And it was like really quite rough stuff what he was singing about, and it was like all like fuck this, fuck that. And then like the development of his albums, like because what's he on his third one now, so his second one probably made him mainstream, and everybody knows that song. Like it always comes on the radio, and everybody knows She Said, and that's what he's famous for. But his newer album is probably, if not better, and has more like different genre influences on each individual track than his second one. But yeah, I think that he is very underrated, and he's not played enough on radio, if I'm honest. Like that, you only ever hear that one song, and that was 2010 that got released, that song. And I've never heard of him on the radio except that song.
Yeah. No, I think going with that question like that, you kind of, I think if you don't go with like a band or an artist that has some significance when you're growing up and gets you into music, like that's why when you were like and ahhing about the Smiths, I was like, it's the Smiths, isn't it? It's got to be, you know what I mean? Because you're like, oh yeah, you got me, you know. I think if you don't really go for an art, like for me it's the Clash, and for complete similar reasons to what you guys said. I grew up with them and like being an angsty teen and just like not, you know, kind of introducing it to other musics as well. I think like if you don't kind of go with that kind of those reasons, there's something wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? You've got to kind of be loyal with that question.
You know, it's not about like. It's boring to give a generic answer sometimes. So if someone along and go like, "Oh, I like this band," you know, like from about 100 years ago, and so I love this particular person's music, and like they're not widely known. And that's also equally an acceptable answer, because I guess at the end of the day, it's the type of music that we are drawn to.
Yeah. You know. Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it actually. Some music you're drawn to.
Well, I think that rounded off quite well. Can you believe, like, every time, and Ed's going to sing us a song, but can you believe every time we talk, it doesn't seem like we talk for like 45 minutes to an hour. It just like goes like that, and then we've literally talked for an hour, basically.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. Yeah, that was good fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
That is like totally welcome. Yeah. Thank God we finally organised the day, so it was like, yes, thank God.
Yeah, my life's been a bit manic with my new job and everything, so yeah. But yeah, I'm glad we finally got round to doing it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Guys. Thank you very much. See you later.
Cheers. See you later.
Bye. Little tune out. Keep going, Ed, because we're just